Hello and welcome back to Spin Cycle Live. I'm your host, Nathan Hale, and we have got a lot of stories to cover today. Today is Wednesday, May 21st, 2025. Quick announcement right at the top. If you missed the show on Monday, the show is moving to a new time. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we are going to 6 p.m. Eastern Time, and we are rerunning the show Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So I'll announce it one more time after that. But, if you're new to the show, we cover the news here. We cover all the hottest, newest stories. We stay on top of things around here on this show. We're streaming on X, Rumble, YouTube, Instagram, all the places. Follow our TikTok. Follow the show on Rumble and on X at Spin Cycle Live. Follow me at Home180 and all the other platforms. But I hope you're all having a great day. But we have a lot to get into, mostly from the Daily Wire. Found 3 Daily Wire stories today. Not that I have anything against the Daily Wire, but usually I don't have 3 stories from usually it's like 1. But they were on top of things with the news on Wednesday. All right, let's go to our very first one. It has to do with the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC. So apparently this is a Daily Wire exclusive. So the Federal Trade Commission sets sights on transgender procedures on kids. So the Federal Trade Commission is setting its sights on the industry pushing transgender medicine procedures on minors. Documents obtained by the Daily Wire show a potential major step in the Trump administration's efforts to crack down on radical gender ideology. The FTC, an agency tasked with protecting American consumers, will hold a day-long workshop in July on transgender surgeries, hormones, and puberty blockers, according to an internal memo obtained by the Daily Wire. That's a likely indicator of the agency's intentions. The FTC often holds such events before initiating legal action against an industry to gain information, gather evidence, and solicit the input of affected Americans. Quote, under the Federal Trade Commission Act, the FTC is provided broad authority to protect consumers from unfair and deceptive trade acts and practices. The memo reads, quote, there is now considerable reason to believe that the doctors and medical providers pushing gender-affirming care on minors are knowingly deceiving parents by exaggerating gender-affirming care's benefits and downplaying its harmful side effects. No kidding. The Trump-appointed chairman of the FTC, Andrew Ferguson, reportedly pitched the president on using the agency to fight, quote, against the trans agenda, unquote, before he was selected for the post, according to a document obtained by Punchbowl News in December. Ferguson believed the FTC could, quote, investigate the doctors, the therapists, hospitals, and others who deceptively push gender confusion, puberty blockers, hormone replacement, and sex change surgeries on children and adults, while failing to disclose strong evidence that such interventions are not helpful and carry enormous risks, Punchbowl News reported. I think that's all I wanted to cover in that. So this is great. This is yet another attack on ending the war on kids when it comes to gender ideology. By the way, if you're pounding in the background, I don't know if they've been building a 3rd or 4th story above me in this apartment building or what, but they've been hammering away up there. So just ignore. You're going to hear some crash and some banging. And of course, as soon as I go to record an episode for you all, they start banging. Anyways, back to the story. So, like I was saying, this is yet another attack on ending the war on kids that we've seen in this country for several years now. This really all started coming up right around COVID did. How crazy the trans agenda and the social contagion of it all had gotten. And it's been proven time and time again that everything we've known, everything we've heard of transgender procedures has been nothing but a lie, especially when it comes to kids. You're a grown adult, you want to go cut off your body parts, go do your thing. Don't let me stand in your way of being a crazy person and doing that. But you should not be cutting off the healthy body parts of children for any reason, let alone to please how they feel on the inside, how their emotions are on the inside, So this is absolutely great. We'll see if they follow through. There's always the risk that they don't. I think when, I'm always skeptical whenever I see government action happening towards something as big as the gender wars. But hopefully they do. The Trump administration has done a pretty good job of following through on things so far that they've said that, they're working on doing at the time. So, there's the whole thing with the southern border. They followed through on that. They're following through on what they said they were going to do with the tariffs. They're following through on what they said they were going to do when it came to taking funding away from universities like Harvard. So I have no reason to doubt that they won't follow through on this as well, but there's always that risk that they won't. So we'll keep you updated on the story as it comes out, but this is great news. Great news. All right. Next, we have a story from AP News. White House says Trump is reviewing IVF policy recommendations promised in executive order. Days after a bombing outside a Southern California fertility clinic, a White House official confirmed Tuesday that the Trump administration is reviewing a list of recommendations to expand access to in vitro fertilization. President Donald Trump signed an executive order in February asking for ways to protect access and, quote, aggressively lower out-of-pocket health plan costs for IVF treatment. The White House spokesperson, Kush Dessa, I don't know how you pronounce this individual's name, said that the White House Domestic Policy Council wrote the list of recommendations over the last 90 days. Trump called for universal coverage of IVF treatment while on the campaign trail. So that's the last thing I want to say. And there's just that one little sentence. You can read the full article for yourself. But what I really want to touch on with this was everything that had to do with Project 2025. So the left made all of these claims that, Project 2025 was Trump's plan, that he was going to implement this humongous plan that was going to strip reproductive rights. He was going to end IVF treatment forever nationwide, blah, blah, blah. And Trump consistently came out again and again and said, no. Project 2025 is not my plan. It has nothing to do with me. I haven't even read it. It said in it that IVF treatment is going to be under attack. The left, you can go look the news articles up. The left said that IVF treatment was going to be ended if Donald Trump comes in office. There was going to be none of it. The only way that you're going to be able to conceive a baby, conceive a child in this country, was to be a traditional man and woman relationship. No more IVF. But we're seeing here today, IVF is not under attack. IVF is being protected. IVF is going to be available to more women than ever before in the United States under Donald Trump. And yet, the AP does not want to acknowledge that. The AP doesn't want to acknowledge that they said that it was going to be under attack in 2025, Project 2025. Leftist news organizations now want to admit they were wrong, that Donald Trump is in fact protecting things like IVF. These same leftist news organizations don't even want to admit that Donald Trump isn't even that conservative when it comes to the whole abortion debate in general. He's actually pretty progressive when it comes to it, all things considered. But you won't see that mentioned from them. So this is great news from the Trump administration. IVF should be protected. IVF is a great medical procedure that has enabled so many families to have a child. I'm pro-family, no matter which way that comes, via adoption, IVF, however that is. So I think it's great. The more families that can have kids, the better, in my opinion. Kids are an amazing thing to have. All right, that's all I got to say about that. Moving on to our next story. Another Daily Wire story. All right. So Trump reveals new deals about Golden Dome missile defense system to protect the U.S. President Donald Trump said Tuesday that he expects his Golden Dome missile defense project to be completed by the end of his term. Speaking from the Oval Office, Trump announced that his administration had developed a draft architecture of what the Golden Dome would look like. He said the project, which is expected to cost around $175 billion, would protect America from hypersonic, ballistic, and cruise missiles. Quote, once fully constructed, the Golden Dome will be capable of intercepting missiles, even if they are launched from other sides of the world, and even if they are launched from space. And we will have the best system ever built. Trump said, quote, we will truly be completing the job that President Reagan started 40 years ago, forever ending the missile threat to the American homeland. Trump said the missile defense project, quote, should be fully operational by the end of my term, adding that the, quote, one big beautiful bill making its way through Congress would include the first $25 billion for the project. He first rolled out the plan in January, issuing an executive order for the Department of Defense to develop a next-generation missile defense program. Trump said Canada had already reached out to see if they could participate in the defense program, saying it would pay their fair share if it joined the project. So this is great. So if you don't know what the Golden Dome is, it's basically America's version of the Iron Dome. So Israel, for example, has an Iron Dome that was, I believe, largely created by the United States. And the whole idea behind it, it's not a physical dome, but it is strategically placed counter missile sites over the area that should a missile come in or any sort of bomb come flying in towards us, we can quickly shoot out a missile to intercept in there and blow it up before it hits a civilian area. Israel is constantly under attack from all of its surrounding countries. So they have a great system in place that basically blows up missiles before it can hit them. It's how they're largely protected by a lot of these Middle Eastern nations. And America should have one as well soon. So Canada seems to be also a part of this program, which I think is great, protecting all of North America. I have nothing against Canada. When it really comes down to it, Canada is a great country that is being run under terrible leadership. So I think it's great that they are signing on to a deal with us to also protect themselves, right? It really secures North America as being this crucial location that's protected on all sides, right? Because when it comes down to it, the biggest threat on the American homeland is a missile flying in from another country, right? The chances that we're going to be invaded on land are very slim, right? Canada's not going to invade us. Mexico is not going to invade us. They don't have a military strong enough to be able to do it. And there's really no other countries in South America that could even make their way up through Mexico to invade us in somewhat of a war, right? Obviously, we have an invasion that has been largely stopped by illegal aliens coming into our country. But that's a different type of invasion, guys, right? So the biggest threat is a missile flying in us, right? China is not going to all of a sudden pull up on the shores of California without us noticing well in advance, right? So we'd have ample time to do it. But the world's not as big as we'd like to think they are, and missiles fly fast. And it can take, maybe a minute or two for a missile to fly in and hit us from a country like North Korea that's just over the ocean. So having this system is great. It shows that the president cares about the protection of American citizens, and it really cements America's position as a military superpower, and it makes me feel safe. I feel safer as an American knowing that this system's going in place. I hope you do as well. And I feel safer than I ever have as an American before, at least in the past 4 years, while we had Joe Biden in charge. So that's all I got to say about that. So move on to our next story. This comes from NBC News. Another follow through by the Republican agenda, by the way. So the Senate unexpectedly passes the No Tax on Tip Act in a unanimous vote. Senator Jackie Rosen, a Democrat from New York, called up the bipartisan bill for immediate passage, and no senator objected. The measure now goes to the House. In a surprise move, the Republican-led Senate quickly passed the No Tax on Tip Act on Tuesday, giving its official stamp of approval to an idea that has gained traction since President Trump campaigned on it last year. the legislation would create a tax deduction worth up to $25,000 for tips limited to cash tips that workers reported to employers for withholding purposes on payroll taxes. The tax break would also be restricted to employees who earn $160,000 or less in 2025, an amount that will raise with inflation in coming years. So this is fantastic. Number one, I'd like to point out the fact that President Trump came up with this idea first. He campaigned on 2024. Kamala Harris stole the idea from him, also campaigned on it as if this was her own independent idea, which I'm sure that she was dumb enough to assume it was because it was just spoon-fed to her by one of her campaign aides. And Democrats rallied around Kamala Harris for a whole no tax on tip thing when it was Donald Trump who came up with it in the first place, right? But this is fantastic. I'm glad to see Republicans kind of rallying around one of these key ideas that Trump campaigned on. It's furthering, showing us that there were promises made and promises kept from his campaign. This is going to help out a lot of people. There are a lot of service workers who depend on tips to pay their paychecks, right? In a lot of states, if you work as a waiter or a bartender, you can be paid under minimum wage because they assume that money is going to be made up with the tips that you're receiving through the night, which is great, right? And that money that you're receiving should go directly to you, right? It was a gift given to you by the people who you served as a waiter, and thus it shouldn't be tipped. It shouldn't be, right? There's no reason why the government should be taking any of that money. It was a gift to you. It would be the same as, me giving you a present, for your birthday, right? Here's $20. Go get yourself something else, right? The government shouldn't be coming down and taking a percentage of that, right? There's no reason for it. So I think it's going to help out a lot of working class Americans, a lot of waiters, and especially a lot of young people, right? There's a lot of young people who are 16, 17, 18, even in school and college, who are working their way in mostly restaurant jobs to pay their way through school, and every extra dollar counts. And you assume that you might, I've known waiters who they've gotten several $100s per night just in tips alone. And you assume that all that's being taxed. I don't know what the tax rate on tips are exactly, but you assume that they're getting taxed on this. That could be a significant chunk taken out of their tips that they could be using, that could fill up a tank of gas in their car, that could help to pay the student loan, that could help pay their way through school, right? That could pay for any number of things, right? So this is fantastic. Glad to see it going through. And I'm glad to see this was unanimous as well, right? If you're a Democrat and you voted against no tax on tips, who are you, by the way? Who are you really? I'm excited to see how this goes to the House, considering that it was unanimous in the Senate. We'll see how the House votes on this in the coming days. We'll be sure to keep you updated on this as time goes on. Let's move on. Our very last story of today. We have a bombshell new report from the Daily Wire. The report lays out how the Biden administration covered up deadly side effects of the COVID-19 vaccination. The Biden administration was aware of potentially deadly side effects associated with COVID vaccines and chose not to alert the public about the risk for months, according to a new Senate report. According to the report from the Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations, officials knew as early as February 2021 the vaccines were associated with myocarditis, inflammation of the heart muscle, and pancreatitis, inflammation of the thin tissue surrounding the heart. Pericarditis, excuse me. Still, they waited to warn the public until June as they pushed the vaccine on Americans. So you knew as early as February and waited February, March, April, May, June. They waited over 4 months to even start talking about it. The report concludes that U.S. health officials, quote, knew about the risks of myocarditis, downplayed the health concerns, and deliberately delayed information for the public was about the risk. So this comes from Senator Ron Johnson's office, who chairs the subcommittee and will lead a hearing on it later this afternoon. And this is great. So if you want to go and read the actual article, it's 55 pages long. This report is. linked in the description down below if you're really interested in getting into the nitty-gritty details of it. It's right here in the Daily Wire report. But the federal government was very well aware of the myocarditis signal, particularly in young men, as early as February. Senator Ron Johnson told the Daily Wire, adding that Israel officials were informing the United States about the side effects they were noticing. Israel rolled out vaccinations quicker than the United States, so Israel health officials saw adverse effects sooner. The report states that the Israeli Ministry of Health notified Center for Disease Control and Prevention officials of, quote, large reports of myocarditis, particularly in young people following the administration of the Pfizer vaccine. Johnson said the report, quote, failure to warn how federal health agencies downplayed the risk of myocarditis and other adverse events following the COVID-19 vaccination that documents this apparent cover-up in over 2,400 pages of attachments, which largely derive from Freedom of Information Acts. Quote, rather than provide informed consent, the federal health agencies, the Biden administration covered it up, Johnson charged. They downplayed the signals. An executive summary of the report notes that Johnson's committee was effectively stonewalled by the Biden administration when requesting documents seeking transparency. Under the Trump administration, that changed. Quote, now under a new administration and a new HHS secretary, HHS is beginning to produce records pursuant to the chairman's subpoena that should have been provided years ago without redactions to Congress and the public, the report said. So this is really striking. You know, I think that what really stands out to all of us is that the conservatives were right all along to be fearful of a new vaccine that was being pushed on all of us, right? Let's never forget that it was being pushed on us. Many of us lost our jobs because they were requiring us to get a vaccine that we did not want, right? The reports that it was not effective in the ways that it was being claimed to be effective, the reports that showed that this could have negative health outcomes, especially to young people, by the way. The reports that this was not properly tested, I think we're really learning that these were all true. That we should have listened to these people all along, that this was the right thing, that this was not the right thing to do at the time that it happened, right? I think Americans really woke up to the fact that the government gained a whole lot more power and had way more authority in our health and our lives than they had thought they did. Just by the sole fact that states stood aside and allowed people to get fired from their jobs for not wanting to take a vaccine that was not even effective towards them. Because, by the way, they all said the vaccine was safe and effective. Safe and effective. Safe and effective. Never forget, they said it was safe and effective. Over and over again, right? All these people said it was safe and effective. They said to us that when you got the COVID vaccine, COVID stopped with you. It stopped with you, which was not true. That was just a blatant lie. There was never scientific evidence or anything to prove that that was even a thing. What the science said the COVID vaccine did was it prevented it from, being spread, right? That it didn't prevent you from getting it. It just prevented from necessarily being spread to another person, which who knows if that was even true, right? I'm all very skeptical on all of this, right? Every single thing I've heard about the vaccine so far has come out to be not true. So I'm not sure that any of it. I'm starting to believe the conspiracy theorists, quote unquote, you can call them conspiracy theorists at this point, that there really wasn't anything in the vaccine. I didn't really do anything against COVID, right? So I'm believing those people more and more. They started to go on a limb like that. But I think it is so criminal that we have an administration that knowingly kept information from doctors and from the general public to make informed consent to their patients, as well as make informed consent on themselves if they wanted to get a vaccine or not, right? I understand it's two completely different topics for people who willingly went and got it and were forcefully given it to keep their jobs. But there are millions of people who went out and got it and They didn't need to. They got because they wanted to. And they were not given that informed consent to know that. We just saw the FDA yesterday, I believe, came out and is no longer recommending the COVID vaccine be routinely given to people under the age of 65 unless they have some sort of current health condition that would make them more susceptible to COVID, which is like, yeah, duh, right? If you're an old person who has kind of a weaker immune system as is, or has an existing condition, maybe this wasn't that bad of an idea for you if you want to listen to the science at all. But there was no reason why kids in school should have gotten it. There's no reason why we should shut down schools, right? All this that we got from COVID was nothing more than a way for the government to sweep in and gain broad power over us as Americans. And thankfully, we had people like Governor Ron DeSantis and the Daily Wire and many others stand up and say, no, we are pushing back against this. And the Constitution held up, state statutes held up, and many of these outrageous government actions were stricken down by the court, which is fantastic, right? We need more people like that in government to protect us as Americans, right? We saw Florida become the bastion of freedom and tranquility in the United States under COVID. So yet again, another example how conservatives are right all along when it comes to COVID, and the Democrats really have no business talking about science, in my opinion. That's all I got to say for today. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. I know that I did. And yeah, let me know what you think about these stories. You know, send me a message on Twitter. Hit me up. Let me know what's going on with it. If you have thoughts, leave them in the comments. Follow us on YouTube, Rumble, Instagram, Twitter. Follow me on X. That's where I got all my posts at. And we'll be back here Friday for our first ever Friday show. Right? We are in the summer of Spin Cycle, so we got 3 shows happening a week now. And once again, I want to let you know that starting next week, next Monday, this coming Monday, a few days from now, we're moving the show to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Reruns will be staying at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Those reruns happen Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday now. Regular show comes out Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So with that, I'll see you back here again on Friday. I hope you have a great rest of your week. Until then, I've been Nathan Hale. This has been Spin Cycle Live. I'll see you all very soon. Peace out. Bye.